Okay, we will, is this on? I think it is. We'll begin momentarily. Hey, Mike. He's against this thing, right? Yes. Okay. All right. He's not here. It's changed. Still against Copy Road, right? The tire place on Copy, because we could turn it down. Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, we'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. Do you have the minutes, sir? Thank you. We have the minutes of the meeting, previously held meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? So there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Thank you for that. The first item on our regular list of legislation is the tire store proposal for conditional use at 1428 Copley Road. I know Mr. York is here to give us an update. I believe there's pending litigation possibly on this?
There is. And that pending litigation does not present an impediment or prohibition to this council proceeding to an up or down vote regarding that tire shop application for conditional use, which is currently in front of council.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. York. Is there any questions or comments on this one? Ms. Mobian?
What did you say exactly?
What I said is there's no reason council can't vote on this conditional use, okay, whether it's up or down. I mean, I could get into more, I could give more information, but I don't think it's necessary to do that.
Okay. No, I didn't quite hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Again, I just want to kind of like restate my position from last week. I want to thank Mr. Antonucci and the administration for expressing the violations in relation to how they were operating, and they extended opportunity for them to be compliant. That has not happened. The community has expressed their concern and do not wish to have that type of business operating right there, so I just want to stand in opposition.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neal. Given that, would you like to make a motion?
Yes,
this
sir.
Particular, it'd have to be with suspension of the rules. But go ahead.
Okay.
Adverse report with suspension of the rules.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for an adverse report with suspension of the rules, please, sir.
Thank you. Is there a second? There's a second. All those in favor of an adverse report with suspension of the rules signify by saying aye. Aye. Those in favor? Very good. Report that out this evening. We have one item that is up for a public hearing. I'm sorry. No. We have one new item. We'll take time on the balance of the agenda short of any concerns or comments. We'll move into the new list of legislation at this time, which is the new item is declaring improvements to certain real property located in the Eastgate urban redevelopment area to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, declaring that construction and rehabilitation of certain real property is a public purpose, providing for the collection of service payments in lieu of taxes and the deposit of those service payments in the urban redevelopment tax increment equivalent fund, providing for the payment of a portion of said service payments to the Akron Public School District. Mr. Volman is here. Mr. Becker's here.
Yeah, I can.
Yes, Mr. Volman.
Yeah, Chairman Fusco and members of the Planning Committee and Council. In 2014, we did a development agreement with IRG for the whole East End project. Under that agreement, we agreed to do TIF for the different improvements. As you're well aware by now, every time that we actually need to do the TIF, we come back with a separate piece of legislation. I think so. Is that better? Okay. As you know, every time we actually time to do the TIF and apply for the TIF, we need to come back with a separate piece of legislation that comes to council. That's what we're here for. TIF legislation. And this piece is involved with the improvements that will eventually be used to house Babcock and Wilcox.
Very,
Babcock and Wilcox, yeah.
okay, very good. The, in essence, this kind of like pursuant to the 2014 agreement, this basically starts the clock on the TIF. Is that correct? From what I read, that's
it would allow us to apply for the TIF.
Okay.
And then once it's granted, the clock would start ticking.
Very good. Questions or comments? Ms. Mobian.
I see that you've worked out the agreement with the Akron Public School Systems.
Yeah, well, that's been, since the 90s.
So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, they are aware of this and that they,
Yeah, we have a compensation agreement with the Akron Public Schools that detail how TIF funds are spent whenever a TIF project is funded.
so every project, you don't update them as to what's going on, it's just based on what you've done in the past?
I don't know. I don't update. I mean, I don't think there's anything to update, really. There's an agreement. It gets TIF. They get their share. They get a chance to comment when the application is filed with the state. They're
Their
made
share
aware.
is not delayed or anything? It's just normal?
Yeah, this is just as any other TIF project that we've done. This would be the same.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Thank you for their comments. Okay. What's your pleasure on this item?
Consent agenda would be great.
Very good. Is there a motion for consent? Is there a second? All those in favor of consent agenda signify by saying aye. Against? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Hearing none, we're adjourned because I don't believe we have anything else. Mr. Neal?
I did want to bring up one thing that we've asked about, and this isn't for you, gentlemen, but it's just in general. I was doing some research, just trying to get an understanding on how some cities are dealing with their financial crunches, and this was in relation to some discussion we had about the Bounce building, and not just Bounce, but other assets that the city has had that we've kind of like forgiven debt or transferred to someone else. Because, I mean, there may be some maintenance expense to us or to help initiate development in other communities. And I'd like I know we've asked for information in the past, but it's crucial for council if we can have some understanding on, one, the impact of the tax abatement, just to get an understanding on how to forecast the city's future finances, especially since with the impact of the CSO project and some other financial projections, they're saying that we're going to go to deficit spending in the year 2022. But this is what I found interesting that some cities were doing. We know that we've been challenged with the retirees benefit plan, and what some cities have done is when they have assets like the Bounce building or the cell towers, they form a community trust, and they transfer those assets into that trust. I know with the cell towers, the conversation was, well, as a city, we can't particularly do that, but we can always form the deal with those who we're negotiating with in a different way, in a more creative way, to maybe, for lack of a better term, receive a greater return on an asset. So from my standpoint, what I'm asking is if we can have an opportunity from the administration to look at what assets we have, and I think we've asked for this in the past, what other assets does the city have that it's looking at potentially releasing? Another thing that comes to mind, Mr. Chairman, is remember there was a rush, this was before this administration, there was a rush to get rid of the steam plant. It was said that we were losing something like $12 million. Now that's an asset that's actually generating revenue for the city. So what I'd like to see is, one, some of the questions that we've asked about as far as projecting with the tax abatement, the revenue that's would have been gleaned if that was just a regular development project, compared to the projected return that we want to get. And then two, if we are, per our charter, are able to do some of the creative things that other cities are doing, where they're transferring assets, creating like community trust, so that those assets can generate revenue rather than just be given away.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Ellen Landers-Nicht.
I just wanted to respectfully respond to something that Councilman Neal said. That's the second week I've heard that mentioned about deficit spending. I think you're referring to the CSO project in particular, and what's happening is the city is building fund balance now so that those funds will be there in the bank when we need them. So we may not collect revenue in that year that equals spending, but we will not be deficit spending. We will have that money available. That's why we're building that fund balance. So I just wanted to make sure that council doesn't think that we have projections that we're going to be deficit spending in our budget in any year, 2020 or otherwise. That's very specific to the CSO program, and that's why we're building that fund balance so that money will be there. So we are not deficit spending now or in 2020. Thank you.
No. But again, if we do not plan, we will be at that time. So.
Understand. I just wanted to make sure that you understood what was reported and that it was very specific.
Yes, ma'am. I understand very well. I understand very well. I mean, we've had challenges. That's why we've had to sell an income-generating asset to cover payroll. You know, not pay off a bond, not pay off a fixed expense, but a variable expense. And so, as council, one of our main responsibilities is to have an understanding of our finances. And so I'm saying, as we look at, you know, as we have these assets, and I believe we did ask, what other assets does the city have that potentially, you know, and we asked this when we did the cell tower deal, that the city potentially was looking at giving away, selling off, so that we could look at more creative ways to secure the city's future finances. So.
Thank you. Short of that, we're adjourned. Thank you.